talk about venture capital all day long, but I do want to address this point of how is venture capital relevant to the global credit crisis. What are some of the ways that we work that might have been useful if employed more broadly in the economy, and how can we help? So we back, as I was describing, innovation. And we back intellectual property. You've got to have a reason why you're going to beat your competition in order to get venture capital. So much of our economy in the past 10 years has gone, so much of the innovation, the smart people have moved onto Wall Street and figured out ways to chop up mortgages into ever smaller pieces. And when I'm recruiting for a software company, 2 years ago I was competing for talent with the Merrill Lynches and the Smith Barneys and the Citibanks, because they were paying the most money for the smartest people in the world to come to the United States and create zero value. Just figure out ways to slice up mortgages. That is the antithesis of what the venture capital industry is about. That is not creating any wealth. That's not innovation. That's financial engineering. So what we would like to promote as venture capitalists is truly think of something that's new to the world, because that's what's going to create value. Not tweaking something existing, not figuring out a way to package and remarket something that is tired, but truly thinking of something innovative. And that, I think, is the ethic of venture capital, and we hope that that now, given the moral and actual bankruptcy of financial engineering and what it's done to our country, people step back a little bit and think from a first principles basis, okay, is what I'm doing actually useful? Is it innovative? Am I bringing something new to this equation? And that's sort of the way we have to think, and we're hoping that the United States gets back to Ben Franklin and some of the important guys who got us where we are today. Think like an owner. So everybody, essentially everybody, in every company we invest in has ownership in their company. So we invest in companies that give stock options broadly to every employee in the company. And that's a nice part of your compensation, but it's much more important than that. It removes the principal agent problem. If you own even 0.5% of the company you work for, and a customer comes in and says, I've got this problem, you screwed this up, you are 10 times more likely to actually address their problem, because you directly benefit, and more importantly, you're forced to think like an owner of that business, not just like an employee, not like someone who's going to move on in 6 months, not like somebody who doesn't have or feel the impact of a bad decision relative to a customer. So this is most acute in lending businesses, but it's true in every business. People who think like owners are much better employees. In every company we invest in, every employee is an owner, and therefore thinks like an owner. And that is, again, an ethic of the venture business that we lost somehow along the way with all these layered distribution of these lending products, and it's caused a big part of this problem. Finally, before I move on to international themes, there's a lot of ways to grow. The easiest way to grow is to find somebody to lend you money and use that money to grow. Hey, it's not your money, but we've seen where that's gotten us. The best way to grow is through equity and profits. Raise equity that you don't have to pay back, that is employed in growing your business, and then generate profits and recycle those profits into growing your business. Use loans, leverage judiciously, and only when you can pay it back in a reasonable and well-known period of time. And again, we're forced to this state of affairs now because banks aren't lending, but they'll start lending again, and if we make the mistake of treating their loans like equity, treating them as an option, let's take this money and things go well, I can pay it back, and if not, I'll move on, we're going to end up right back in the same place. Growth capital should come in the form of equity and recycled profits, not debt, however friendly the loan officer. And then finally, look overseas. I mean, I think it's important to note that even if you don't look overseas, overseas is looking at you, and you don't really have a choice at this point. 15 years ago when I was at venture capital, it was a local business. I competed locally with other venture capital firms for companies that were basically at least headquartered, and almost all their employees were local, East Coast of the United States. That is not true now. One of our most successful companies, 2/3 of their employees are in Hungary. They do all their development in Romania. 1/3 of their sales force is in Finland. They've got a freelance worker in Israel, headquartered in Boulder, Colorado, with a big sales office in Massachusetts, and 3 other offices in Japan, Thailand, and Singapore. It's a radically global organization. The stuff is done best where the people who are the best to do it live. It comes with a tremendous amount of headaches, but we're beating the pants off our competition, not just in cost, but in quality. And that, if your competition is doing that, you have to do it. It's no longer sort of a discretionary option. You have to do it. So our companies compete globally and therefore have to be global. I will say, until a couple, 3 years ago, I kind of thought that wasn't really true of me. I invest in these companies. I admit they have to be global. I try to help them think about outsourcing workforce and establishing sales offices and worrying about competition in India and China and all that stuff. But I was still kind of thinking, I can still invest here locally. Until it became obvious to me that even my business was getting flattened and globalized. And it's sort of a terrifying feeling. You get comfortable and you understand the playing field and who you're competing with and how to beat them, or sometimes you lose to them, but in general you're pretty confident. But then you start losing deals to venture capitalists in London or in Mumbai because they bring something you can't bring, access to the talent pools of the customers in those markets. I had a company that met a venture capitalist because they were following his Twitter stream. I don't know if anyone here Twitters, this micro-blogging platform. They were following this guy's Twitter stream. He got so enamored of the way he thought about the world that I lost that deal to this guy in India because of Twitter, which is ridiculous on the face of it. But that's a wake-up call for me. I no longer have the luxury of sort of assuming that everyone else has to worry about it, but my business is local. Everything is becoming global. It's at the margin a little terrifying for guys like me who are 15 years into their career and have to make this adjustment. I think it should be thrilling for you guys who have the option of setting your frameworks now, thinking of yourselves in this incredibly broad, open, flexible, global way. It's not, you're not 6, you're 20 or 22 or 19, so there's going to be an adjustment, but you got to do it. And think how much better off you are than me or your folks who probably don't think about what's going on in Mumbai on a daily basis. I've had to train myself to do that, and I still fail a lot. And I had to go over there, and I was sick for like a month. But now, hopefully I'm used to the bugs, and I can go back and become more of a citizen of this world, because the world is absolutely knocking on our doors. To sum up, we're in a horrific mess. We got here because we didn't pay attention to the outcomes of our decisions, and because we were far too optimistic about the future and therefore used way too much leverage. This unwinding of all that leverage is going to be a long and excruciating process. Money's going to be very hard to come by. The economies are going to shrink. But you guys, as painful as finding a job might be, are actually much better positioned than guys like me who kind of had 15 years of glory and now have to figure out how to reinvent themselves in the face of a different world. A world that's acutely, sometimes painfully more global. In a world where a lot of the precedent assumptions are no longer going to work about financial markets. So, grasp the nettle. I think it's a very exciting time. And all you have to do is kind of liberate yourself a little bit from some of these shackles, and I think you'll do great. So those are the comments I wanted to make today, and I think we've got 20 minutes or so for questions. So I'd love to open it up to the audience and see if any of this didn't make sense. I'd rather the bankers not ask questions in case I goofed up the charts. No, I'm kidding. Feel free to pile on. But I really would love it if some of the students had any questions about venture capital, this credit crisis issue, or the global nature of competition today. So with that.